Did you ever feel like someone was pulling your strings, and you didn't even realize it until it was too late? Like you were in a conversation, and afterward, you couldn't quite explain what happened, but somehow you lost. You walked away drained, doubting yourself, second-guessing your instincts. That's not by accident. That's what evil people and manipulators do. They don't break in through the front door. They study you, they mirror you, and they twist reality until they've turned you into a version of yourself that serves them. And if you don't know how to outsmart them, they'll do it again and again and again. But here's what they never expect: that you learn the game, that you see through the mask, that you become the person who can walk into any room and disarm the most dangerous kind of person. Not with violence, not with fear, but with intelligence, precision, and unshakable control. To beat a manipulator, you must stop playing defense. You must start observing. Evil people rely on your emotions, your trust, your empathy, your fear. So the first thing you must take back is your calm. Your stillness is your weapon. It unnerves them. When you don't react the way they expect, they lose control. Manipulators want chaos, but when you respond with quiet strength, you starve them of their power. They use charm like a shield, polished, rehearsed, intoxicating. But behind that charm is control. Listen closely. Manipulators repeat things that make them look superior, but avoid accountability. If someone never says, "I was wrong," run. If they constantly shift blame, run faster. But more importantly, document their patterns. Pay attention to their tactics. Don't fight them with emotion. Outsmart them with clarity. Evil people pretend to care. They'll say, "I just want what's best for you," while sabotaging your confidence, isolating you from truth, and feeding on your insecurity. So you must strengthen your core. That means building a strong internal compass. Stop outsourcing your sense of right and wrong to others. If it feels off, it is off. If your gut tells you someone is lying, it's because they probably are. Your intuition is not paranoia. It's your early warning system. Learn to trust it. They'll gaslight you, make you doubt your memory, your logic, your sanity. You'll find yourself apologizing for things you didn't do. So how do you win? By anchoring yourself in truth. Keep receipts. Write down what was said. Record your impressions. The moment someone tries to rewrite history, you have the facts, not their fiction. You do not argue with them. You reveal the truth to yourself, and then you act accordingly. Never try to change a manipulator. You are not their savior. You are not their therapist. You do not need to. Understand where they're coming from. That is how they stall you. That is how they gain more time to weaken you. Your job is not to understand evil. Your job is to protect yourself from it. You outsmart them by detaching. Don't play the emotional game. Play the strategic one. If you want to win against evil, learn to say less. Silence is a tool. Every time you overshare, you arm them. The less they know, the less they can twist. Speak with intention. Watch their reactions. Watch what makes them twitch, what makes them smirk, and then file that away. Information is your power, but only when you don't give it away for free. They count on your kindness, they count on your decency, they count on your guilt, so stop handing it over like a gift. Boundaries aren't rude, they are life-saving. The most powerful thing you can say to a manipulator is, no. No explanation, no justification, just no. And when they push back harder, that's when you know your boundary is working. Evil thrives in secrecy. That's why you shine light. Not by confronting them publicly, but by removing yourself. By building a life so strong, so clear, so deeply rooted in self-respect. They can't reach you. You become immune to their flattery, untouched by their guilt trips, uninterested in their praise. You see it for what it is. Manipulation disguised as validation. When you stop reacting, they lose their script. When you stop needing their approval, they lose their grip. When you stop fearing what they'll say about you, they lose their voice. Because here's the truth, the moment you stop giving them power, they become small. And their tricks, transparent. They want you to explode. That's the first move they count on. They'll poke you, bait you, insult you subtly, then play the victim when you react. And if you do, you've just handed them control. Because now they get to say, "Look how unstable you are." They'll twist your anger into ammunition. They'll use your pain as proof against you. And the moment you let your emotions drive the conversation, you've lost the wheel. But when you stay calm, When you master your response, they panic. They don't know what to do with someone they can't provoke. The real strength lies in neutrality, not apathy, not weakness, but calculated calm. That kind of calm that says, I see exactly what you're doing, but I won't give you the satisfaction. You hold your posture. You control your breathing. You give nothing away. Because your silence, your restraint, your unwavering tone, it unnerves them more than shouting ever could. They expect chaos. Give them stillness. It's not about being cold. It's about being in control. You're not shutting down your emotions. You're managing them like a pro, like someone who's been trained to detect danger and not flinch. You don't show your cards. You don't engage on their level. Because once you stop reacting, the game flips. Suddenly, they are the ones feeling exposed. They are the ones losing footing. That's how you flip the script without saying a word. That's how you become the one no one can rattle. There's a voice inside you that whispers before it ever screams. That's your intuition, and it's one of your most powerful tools if you have the guts to listen to it. The problem is, we've been trained to override it, to second-guess ourselves, to be polite when something feels wrong, to ignore discomfort for the sake of keeping peace. And that's exactly what evil people and manipulators prey on. They bank on the fact that you'll doubt yourself more than you doubt them. You'll feel it, tight in your chest, a tension in your stomach, a shift in the energy that doesn't match the words being said. That moment when someone smiles, but it doesn't reach their eyes. Or they flatter you, but there's something off in their tone. That's your intuition screaming, this isn't real. And if you wait for logic to catch up, it might be too late. Manipulators know how to confuse you. They mix truth with lies, charm with cruelty, care with control. And you're left wondering if you're imagining things. But the truth is, you're not. You're sensing a mismatch between what you're being told and what you're actually experiencing. That's not paranoia. That's perception. It's your inner system picking up on what your conscious mind hasn't put into words yet. So when you get that internal nudge, listen. You don't owe anyone blind trust. You owe yourself safety. You don't have to accuse. You don't have to confront. But you do have to pay attention. Because every time you ignore your gut, you delay your escape. Every time you excuse their behavior, you hand over more of your power. When something feels wrong, don't argue with it. Don't bury it under, maybe I'm being too sensitive. No, that's how you end up trapped. You outsmart them by trusting the one thing they can't manipulate, your instinct. Your body knows before your brain does. The only question is, will you listen? The smartest move you'll ever make with a manipulator isn't to confront them. It's to observe them, quietly, intentionally, without giving them a single clue you're onto them. That's where your power begins. Because evil people rely on your distraction. They need you reactive, emotional, tangled in their words. But when you shift into observation mode, you change the entire game. Now you're studying them. And trust me, most manipulators are creatures of habit. They follow patterns. They repeat themselves. They use the same tactics on everyone. They just count on you not noticing. So instead of getting pulled into their drama, take a step back. Watch how they twist facts. Watch how they spin stories. Pay attention to how they treat people when no one's watching. How they behave when they're challenged. The truth is always in their patterns, not their words. You'll start to see it, the inconsistencies, the guilt traps, the way they smile when someone else suffers. These are the cracks in the mask. But you can't see them if you're too busy defending yourself or trying to prove a point. Let them think you're naive. Let them think you're falling for it. Meanwhile, you're gathering information, staying grounded, collecting data. That's what sharp people do. You don't waste energy on emotional warfare. You watch, you listen, you remember. And when the time is right, you make decisions not based on feelings, but on evidence. That's how you win with manipulators. Not with fire. With focus. Not with rage. With awareness. You don't fight their illusion. You outgrow it. And the moment they realize you've been watching the whole time, that's when their game starts to crumble. Evil people don't just lie. They rewrite history. They twist moments, reshape conversations, and erase facts to suit their agenda. One day you're sure of what happened, and the next, you're questioning your own memory. That's not an accident. That's gaslighting. And it's one of the most dangerous forms of manipulation because it doesn't just confuse you. It makes you doubt your own sanity. That's how they gain control. Because once you stop trusting yourself, you start depending on them to tell you what's real. And when that happens, they own you. But here's how you break that cycle. You document everything. Don't rely on memory alone. Manipulators know how to exploit forgetfulness. Keep receipts, screenshot messages, write down what was said, when it was said, how it made you feel, because the moment they try to say, that never happened. You have the truth in black and white. You don't argue. You don't explain. You just know. And that knowing, that quiet, concrete certainty, is what keeps you grounded when they try to spin you in circles. It's not about being paranoid. It's about being prepared. When you deal with people who play dirty, you don't walk into the ring without armor. You take notes. You pay attention. You stop giving them room to manipulate the facts. Because the truth is, they count on you forgetting. They rely on time to blur your vision. But when you keep a record, you take that weapon away from them. You replace confusion with clarity. And with clarity comes power. You're not crazy. You're not overreacting. You're not misremembering. You're just dealing with someone who wants to erase the evidence so they can keep rewriting the script. Don't let them. Hold on to your truth. Protect it. Guard it like a shield. Because when the lies come crashing down, it's your truth that will keep you standing. They will test you, again and again. That's how manipulators operate. They push, they poke, and they wait to see what you'll tolerate. And the moment you let something slide, they've found their entry point. They don't kick the door down. They tap gently until you leave it unlocked. That's why boundaries aren't optional. They're critical. They are not about being rude. They are about survival. Every time you say yes when you really mean no, you teach them how to mistreat you. Every time you excuse the behavior, every time you let the small disrespect go unchecked, you tell them exactly how far they can go next time. And trust me, they will go further. The mistake most people make is thinking that setting a boundary has to come with an explanation. It doesn't. No is a complete sentence. That doesn't work for me is enough. But manipulators will challenge that. They'll call you selfish, cold, difficult. They'll accuse you of overreacting. Because boundaries make them uncomfortable. Boundaries expose who they really are. They're used to people bending, breaking, adjusting just to keep the peace. So when you stand firm, you disrupt their pattern, you become unpredictable. And to a manipulator, unpredictability is terrifying. You need to understand something. They're not just pushing for the sake of it. They're testing your limits. They want to see what it takes to break your resolve. They'll start small. Interrupt you, invade your space, make subtle jokes at your expense. If you laugh it off, if you stay quiet, they mark that as permission. Then it escalates. The comments get sharper. The control gets tighter. Before you know it, you're shrinking to fit into a space they created for you. A space that makes them comfortable and keeps you contained. That's the slow erosion of self-respect. And the only thing that stops it is a boundary. When you enforce a boundary, it's not about changing them. It's about protecting you. It's about choosing yourself, even when it makes others uncomfortable. And yes, it will make them uncomfortable, especially manipulators. Because the second you become hard to manipulate, you stop being useful to them. That's when they'll turn up the heat. They'll guilt trip you, play the victim, tell you you've changed. And here's the hard truth. You have changed. You've stopped being easy to control. That's what self-respect looks like in action. It's not loud. It's not flashy. It's consistent. It's in the decisions you make, the lines you draw, the things you no longer tolerate. It's in the calm way you say, "That's not okay with me," and then walk away without negotiating, because you're not asking for approval. You're not seeking validation. You're simply choosing to protect your energy, your mind, your peace. A manipulator wants you off balance. That's their game. If they can get you emotional, they can get you to bend. If they can wear you down, they can make you surrender. But boundaries are your anchor. They keep you grounded in your own values, not theirs. And the more you reinforce them, the stronger you become, not just with others, but with yourself. Because here's the truth that most people miss. The most dangerous manipulator you'll ever deal with isn't out there. It's the voice in your own head telling you to play small, to stay quiet, to keep the peace even when it's costing you your soul. Every time you override your own boundary to make someone else feel comfortable, you betray yourself. And betrayal doesn't just come from other people. It comes from within. You start to feel that sick feeling in your stomach, that quiet resentment, that hollowed-out version of who you used to be. And that's the cost. That's the tax you pay for not standing up for yourself. You want to outsmart manipulators. You want to win against evil people. Start by becoming immovable. Start by making your no sacred. Start by saying, "This is where I end and you begin." And holding that line like your life depends on it. Because it does. Your peace, your dignity, your future all depend on the boundaries you enforce today. And no, it's not easy. It will be uncomfortable. People will leave. People will criticize you. People will call you everything but brave. But don't let their discomfort shake your ground. Manipulators react to boundaries like vampires react to sunlight. It burns them. It exposes them. It takes away their power. And when that happens, their true self comes out. The anger, the guilt-tripping, the silence, the smear campaign. But none of that matters when you are solid. When you've done the work. When you know who you are and what you will and will not allow. So when they show up again with their charm, with their sweet lies, with their fake concern, remember who they really are. Don't let the words fool you. Watch the patterns. Watch the history. And then act from strength, not softness. Because kindness without boundaries is exploitation waiting to happen, and love without self-respect. That's not love at all. That's servitude. You don't need to fight. You don't need to explain. You don't need to scream. You just need to stand. Stand in your truth. Stand in your worth. Stand in your boundary. And let that boundary do what it was designed to do. Keep the wrong people out, and protect the right version of you within. Because once you learn to hold that line, you become the one thing no manipulator can handle: untouchable, unshakable, unbreakable. The moment you start talking too much, you start giving away pieces of yourself. Pieces that manipulators are trained to collect, twist, and weaponize. And they do it without you even realizing it. They'll ask you questions that seem innocent, casual, like they're just being friendly or curious. But they're not. They're gathering intel. Every word you share becomes a thread they can pull later when they want to unravel you. They're listening. Not to understand you, but to dissect you. To find the cracks. To figure out what drives you, what scares you, what makes you tick. That's why speaking less isn't weakness. It's power. The less they know, the less they can control. You don't need to narrate your every thought. You don't need to justify your decisions. You don't need to hand them the blueprint to your mind. Because manipulators thrive on information, they file it away. Your insecurities, your childhood stories, your fears, your failures. They remember it all. And when the moment is right, they'll use it against you. Subtly, quietly, effectively. And you'll sit there wondering how they managed to cut you in a place you didn't even know was exposed. That's not by accident. That's because you gave them the knife. So instead of filling silence with words, own the silence. Make them speak. Make them reveal who they are. That's how you take control of the dynamic, by becoming the observer, not the open book. Let them talk. Let them perform. People will always show you who they are if you're patient enough to watch. Pay attention to the inconsistencies, to how they talk about other people, to how quickly they turn from praise to criticism. That's where the truth lies, not in what they say about you, but in what they say when they think it doesn't matter. And when you do speak, speak with intention. Speak from clarity, not from pressure. You don't owe anyone access to your private world just because they ask. You can be kind and still keep your boundaries. You can be polite and still protect your peace. Because manipulation doesn't always look like aggression. Sometimes it looks like flattery. Sometimes it sounds like concern. But behind those sweet words is a need for control. So you have to be disciplined with your voice. You have to be strategic with your truth. Not every truth deserves to be shared. Not every question deserves an answer. They'll try to get close. They'll mirror your emotions. Pretend they relate. Pretend they understand. And that's how they build the illusion of connection. By making you feel seen, heard, known. But they're not trying to understand you. They're trying to gain leverage. That's why you speak less. Because every time you stay quiet, every time you withhold unnecessary details, you protect your advantage. You keep them guessing. You maintain your mystery. And mystery is power. In a world full of people who overshare, who post every thought, every fight, every fear for the world to see, you become rare when you hold yourself with restraint. You become dangerous. In the best way, not because you hide who you are, but because you don't hand out like candy to anyone who smiles at you. Your story is sacred. Your pain is sacred. Your plans are sacred. Protect them. Speak less. Listen more. Observe everything. Because when they finally realize they can't read you, can't figure you out, can't use your words against you, that's when they lose their power. That's when you rise, not by saying more, but by saying just enough. One of the fastest ways a manipulator gets their hooks in you is through praise. It sounds good, feels good, but it's calculated. They flatter you, compliment your intelligence, your looks, your potential, and suddenly you feel seen, you feel valued, and then, just like that, you begin to need it. That's how it starts. You don't even realize it's happening because the validation feels like warmth. It feels like connection, but it's not. It's bait. And once they know you crave their approval, they've got you on a leash. And they'll yank it any time you start stepping out of line. That's why detaching from validation is non-negotiable. Especially when it's coming from someone who has something to gain by keeping you dependent. You have to stop chasing the high of being liked, praised, approved of. Because when your worth depends on their reaction, you hand over control of your identity. You become easy to manipulate. If they want you to feel good, they turn the charm on. If they want to punish you, they go cold. That back and forth conditions you, like training a dog. You find yourself working harder to win back their warmth, trying to fix whatever you did wrong, even when you did nothing. And that loop, that psychological captivity. So here's the shifting: you stop looking outward to know who you are. You stop waiting for a pat on the back to feel good about your decisions. You define yourself. You approve of yourself. Because the more you rely on your own internal compass, the less you're swayed by theirs. That's how you become unmoved. That's how you become solid. The manipulator's power only exists when you need them to see you a certain way. The moment you let go of that need, you break their spell. And yes, it's going to feel uncomfortable at first. You're human. You've been wired to seek connection, to respond to affirmation. But when that affirmation becomes a tool for control, you have to cut the cord. Not all praise is pure. Not all connection is real. If someone's validation comes with strings, it's not a gift. It's a trap. So you practice being okay without the compliments. You practice being misunderstood. You practice standing alone. Not because you want to isolate yourself, but because you want to fortify yourself. And once you no longer need them to tell you that you're enough, you become dangerous in the best way. You become the kind of person who walks into a room and doesn't shrink to be liked or puff up to be feared. You just are, anchored, clear, and untouchable. Manipulators don't know what to do with someone who's immune to their approval. When they can't seduce you with praise or punish you with silence, they lose their grip. Because now, you're not playing the game anymore. You're playing by your own rules, and that is the one thing they cannot control. You cannot fix them. You need to hear that. You cannot save someone who chooses to manipulate, control, or hurt others. You cannot love someone into becoming honest. You cannot explain them into being accountable. That's not strength. That's self-sacrifice. And it's not noble. It's self-destruction. Because the more time you spend trying to understand why they are the way they are, the more time you spend in their world, under their rules, playing by their manipulation. And every minute you spend trying to heal someone who enjoys breaking you is a minute lost from healing yourself. Manipulators are masters at using your empathy against you. They'll tell you stories about their trauma, about how others have hurt them, about how they never meant to do what they did. And you, because you're kind, because you're human, will feel for them. You'll want to help. You'll think, maybe if I love them better, they'll change. But they won't. Because they don't want to change, they want control, and they'll use your compassion as a tool to keep it. The longer you try to fix them, the deeper you sink. You start bending your values to protect their image. You start silencing your truth to avoid upsetting them. You start tolerating things that, deep down, you know are wrong, and that shift. It happens quietly, slowly, until one day you look in the mirror and you don't even recognize the person looking back. That's what happens when you spend your life managing someone else's dysfunction. You lose yourself. So stop asking why they do it. Stop trying to diagnose them. That's not your job. Your job is not to analyze the motives of someone who repeatedly crosses your boundaries. Your job is not to excuse cruelty in the name of compassion. Your job is to get out, to cut the cord, to protect your peace, your energy, your future. And that starts the moment you accept that you are not their healer. You are not their second chance. You are not their rehabilitation center. When you deal with manipulators, you must move from the heart and the head. You cannot outlove evil. You outsmart it. You remove access. You stay grounded in logic. You recognize patterns. You act accordingly. Because manipulators don't change because you love them. They change, if they change, because they lose control, because they hit a wall, because they no longer have access to the people they once fed on emotionally. Don't confuse your role. You can be a good person and still walk away. You can have empathy without becoming someone's emotional punching bag. You can wish them healing while protecting your own life. And let me tell you this. It takes more strength to walk away from someone you care about than it does to stay and keep trying to fix something that's broken by design. Especially when that someone has no intention of growing, no desire to evolve, and every reason to keep you exactly where they want you. Quiet, confused, and stuck. You don't owe your life to someone else's healing. You don't have to ruin yourself to rescue them. Let them be who they are. But don't let who they are change who you are. That's the test. That's the war. And that's where you win. Not by fixing them, but by refusing to be broken with them. Silence makes manipulators squirm. They don't know what to do with it, because silence doesn't give them a foothold. It doesn't give them data. It doesn't feed their ego. And more importantly, it doesn't reveal your next move. You see, manipulators depend on your words. Every time you over-explain, defend, justify, they're collecting intel. They're studying how you tick. But when you go quiet, when you choose to speak with intention instead of impulse, you become unreadable. You become a mystery. And to someone who lives off control, mystery is a threat. Silence is not weakness. It's precision. It's control. And in high-stakes environments, whether it's an interrogation room, a boardroom, or a toxic relationship, control is everything. When you stop filling every uncomfortable moment with chatter, you force the manipulator to reveal themselves. They'll rush to fill the void. They'll start over-explaining, backtracking, showing their cards. Because they're not used to being watched. They're used to doing the watching. But now, the power dynamic has shifted. You're not reacting, you're observing, and observation is where real power lies. Strategic silence isn't passive, it's active discipline. It takes strength to hold your ground without blurting something just to feel in control. It takes training to let the discomfort settle without needing to smooth it over. But the payoff is enormous. Because silence disorients manipulators. They can't read your emotion, your angle, your level of threat. And that makes you dangerous. Not because you're loud, but because you're unknown. Because you don't give them the fuel they need to operate. And it's not just about staying quiet in conversations. It's about silence in your reactions. When they ghost you, stay silent. When they provoke you, silent. When they try to bait you into defending yourself, stay silent. That pause, that breath, that beat before response. That's where your power lies. Because in that space, you decide what to say and what to withhold. You decide what's worth responding to. And most of what manipulators throw at you, it's not worth a single breath. They will call your silence cold. They will say you're emotionally unavailable. But don't mistake silence for emotional absence. You're not disconnected, you're deliberate. You're not reacting because you're numb. You're not reacting because you're disciplined. You know that every time you choose silence over chaos, you're building control over your own life. And that's something a manipulator cannot stand. Let them talk. Let them try to provoke. Let them think they've got you figured out. Meanwhile, you sit in silence, not because you're lost, but because you're calculating. You are choosing not to give them what they want, a response they can manipulate. Because you know now, Your silence is not an absence of power. It is the power. When you're solid on the inside, nothing on the outside can shake you. That's the truth most people don't want to hear. Because it requires work. It requires you to stop blaming them and start building you. Evil people and manipulators don't need to be stronger than you. They just need you to be unsure of yourself. They feed on your self-doubt, your need for validation, your craving to be accepted. But the moment you begin to build inner clarity, real clarity, they lose access. Because clarity gives you the ability to see through their mask. It cuts through confusion like a blade. It silences the noise. You don't develop that kind of strength overnight. You build it decision by decision, boundary by boundary, truth by truth. You build it by sitting with the discomfort instead of running from it. You build it by choosing what's right over what's easy. And most of all, you build it by getting real with yourself. By asking, who am I when no one's watching? What do I stand for when no one's clapping? Can I still hold my ground when no one's agreeing with me? That's the test. Because the people who manipulate you aren't just testing your intelligence. They're testing your identity. If you don't know who you are, they'll define it for you. If you don't know what you value, they'll sell you theirs. If you're not rooted, they'll uproot you and plant lies where your truth should be. That's how people lose themselves, not all at once, bit by little compromises, tiny betrayals of self, until one day, you look around and realize you've built your life on someone else's terms. And you don't even recognize who you are anymore. That's exactly where they want you. Disoriented, dependent, detached from your own instincts. But when you start strengthening your core, when you say, this is who I am, and this is what I will and won't accept, everything changes. Suddenly, the games don't work. The tactics lose their edge, because you're no longer playing from a place of fear, you're playing from power. Quiet power, internal power. And that kind of strength, you can't fake it. You earn it. You earn it every time you choose discipline over impulse. Every time you tell the truth, even when it costs you something. Every time you walk away, even when it hurts. When you're solid on the inside, the manipulation doesn't land. You hear the lie, but it doesn't shake you. You see the tactic, but it doesn't move you. You recognize the charm, but you don't fall for it. Because you're not looking outside for answers. You already have them, and they didn't come from someone else's mouth. They came from your own reflection. From the hard nights. From the quiet rebuilding. From the moments you stood alone, and still didn't fold. That's what evil can't reach. That's what manipulation can't break. A person who's done the work. A person who's faced themselves, cleaned their wounds, set their boundaries, and come out stronger. Not colder, not bitter, but clear. That clarity becomes your armor. That strength becomes your shield. And when they try to twist your mind, when they try to play their games, when they try to sneak in the back door of your insecurity, they find it locked. Because you're no longer available for manipulation. You're no longer confused about your worth. You're no longer someone they can shape. You've become the one thing they can't stand to face. Someone they can't influence, can't trigger, can't control. Someone who's too deeply rooted to be moved. Someone who's not trying to win anyone's approval, because they already own their peace. That's the power you build when you stop waiting to be rescued, and start becoming your own protector. That's what makes you unbreakable. So in the end, it's not about out-yelling them, out-blaming them, or outplaying them. It's about becoming so anchored in who you are, so clear in your values, so steady in your response, that they can't find a single way in. Evil people and manipulators don't crumble because you exposed them. They crumble because you stopped feeding them. You stopped reacting. You stopped explaining. You stopped needing their approval. And that's what makes you untouchable. You protect your peace not by building walls, but by building standards. You protect your mind not by shutting people out, but by sharpening your awareness. And you protect your life not by running from manipulation, but by recognizing it, understanding it, and choosing, every single time, not to play into it. Because the moment you decide you are done being controlled, done being twisted, done being silenced is the moment they lose every ounce of power they ever had over you. And you, fully in command of your mind, your space, your truth, that's a force they can't manipulate, intimidate, or destroy. That's how you outsmart them, not by becoming like them, but by becoming better.